Hi guys, and this is part 4 of our series of video tutorials for flexible urban modeling. And in this video, I'm going to teach you guys how to model hybrid forms. And in particular, what we're seeing in this picture, where in the intergalactic city, there's just this wide variety of design aesthetics going on, from rectilinear living spaces to um, oblong silo towers for storage, perhaps. And also this floating spacecraft that's just hovering above the ground behind. Within this, I'm going to teach you guys how to use quad scatter together with Griebel and advanced edit poly functions to recreate this intergalactic city. And we're trying to achieve something similar to this scene, where we have the spacecraft behind, the tower right here, as well as living quarters right in the middle. So just generally trying to recreate the urban form of an intergalactic city. So let's get started with a new template. We're going to start by modeling the spacecraft behind, and we're going to begin from using a compact extended primitive called the hedra, which is kind of like a diamond shape, and it's kind of tilted in this picture, so we're going to try using the rotate function to kind of give it the feeling of just levitating above ground, somewhere like this. Yep. And we can also see that this seems to be entry openings, and then which is with a circulatory route through the spine of it, and we're going to try to get that as well. So we're going to start with editing the base model with edit poly and just selecting all the edges. Yep. And then we're going to click on animate so that we can adjust it in the future, and then we're going to use chamfering with one edge, and just using quad chamfer, and then controlling the width of the chamfer. So it seems to be quite big around here, so we're going to stick with 2.6 meters. Yep. And let's go back a couple of steps. So it seems to be much bigger, so we're going to play with like 400 size to get a better accurate representation of the form itself in relation to the actual shape. This is going to help us model a bit more quicker in the future. So chamfer, so probably 10 meters. Alright, so just delete this. I'm going to start over again. Just selecting all of it, and we're going to chamfer. So it looks more or less like 20 meters. That seems right. We're going to use a quad chamfer to get the middle lines as well. That's going to help us in the future. Let's stick with 30. Cool. Click on that, and alright, we wanted to animate it, so for that was a irreversible process. But instead, if we try it again with animate, and we're gonna use chamfer all over again, same properties, quad chamfer, make sure it's closed, and then click OK. And after we commit to it, if we click onto this again, we can still make modifications. So make sure you click on animate whenever you model. Now we're going to start designing the surface to get all these protrusion and extrusions. So clicking on control, selecting all the faces. And what we really want to do is, now it's going to start getting really messy, so we're going to isolate this and design this as a separate element. So what we'll do is to detach commit to it. Okay, we'll select this. We'll do another edit poly. And this time we're going to detach it. So we're designing this in a separate element, and we can change the color just to make it a little bit more apparent. Sweet. So we have these surfaces for these protrusions. What we'll do is we'll edit poly it again, select all its faces. We're going to use a tessellate function to subdivide the face. So let's reduce the tension, and then now 4 iterations we're subdividing it by 4 times to the power of 3. To the power of 3, we'll get an equal distribution. As you can see here. Now we're going to do edit poly again on all these faces. Again, animate. And now as you can see here, there's a ring of light here, and we want to allow that. So we're going to use inset by polygon and pushing it inwards by about a meter, and then clicking yes. So they are all now, all of it is now inset by a meter, and basically the perimeter phase this is where the lights will be, and we can attach a material to it in the future. But let's focus on modeling at this point, and then we're going to do another layer of edit poly. And then we're going to animate it, and this time we're going to go another 1.5 inwards, as you can see here. And this time we're ready to extrude it outwards, so we're going to do it extrude, face extrude, about a power of maybe 5 meters. And there we go, we have these extrusions on the surface of the spacecraft, which I assume are kind of like solar panels that generate energy, I presume. There we have it. So we found that shape. Let's go back to the front and have a look at this. So we have a floating spacecraft. So that was for the surface. Now we're going to create this lattice in the middle, which looks like the circulation pattern, like a chassis and a frame for it that's holding all this upwards. So let's go back to the first object, the hedron, and selecting let's turn that off for now. and we're going to create the lattice using a quantify mesh function. Actually, what we'll do is we'll just use subdivide to give us a really detailed space frame. We can reduce the complexity of it slowly. By increasing the distance in between it. That looks right. Let's go up a little bit more. Cool. So you have a chassis for it. And then what we'll do then is to just use the lattice function. This is going to give us a space frame that's holding up the solar panels. So we have struts and also joints. Let's just keep the joints. Let's just keep the struts and remove the joints. Makes it a little bit more believable, and keep the sides to 4 and caps and smoothen it out. So now we have this space frame that's holding up our solar panels, and that's the first element, and we're done with that. So now we're going to start designing the silo, and we're going to start from a standard primitive. We're going to start with a cylinder with a radius height of 600, radius maybe 100, and we're going to try to keep a height segment about 20, maybe 15, and 15 sides, just to keep it equal. Alright, now we're going to use quad scatter for this. So the quad scatter works in a way where you create a geometry and then it's going to populate across the mesh of this. So let's create the first geometry, which is some rings. We're going to use a extended primitive, and we're going to use torus. Not a hose. Let's have a look at it's a tube. Sorry about that. So let's look for the tube. There we go. So we can create a tube with a designated height and length, but basically just keep it simple. As long as it's a ring, it's gonna keep its shape, so don't worry about that. So we're gonna jump back to this, and then we're gonna use quad scatter. and we're just gonna pick this. Alright, so this is going to be populated all across the cylinder on the mesh, and we want to keep the original faces, so just untick that, cool. But what we really want to achieve is this checkering effect, so we're gonna just turn this off. And the way quad scatter works is that it uses material IDs. So we have material ID here, and if we use edit poly, we can start to see what ID each of these meshes are. So we're gonna change material IDs for this to 2, and therefore when we turn on the quad scatter, it's going to be missing. So let's just choose all of that. Oops, so we need one more side. So alright, let's be a little bit more playful with this. So what we can do is to start choosing all of that along all faces. Just bear in mind that when we do parametric modeling, you gotta have a good basic understanding of maths, and just paying attention to the amount of segments. And if we wanted to create this checkered pattern, you obviously had to have even numbers. Just so that this ends would meet nicely and we could get that checkered pattern that we wanted. So we're almost there. And there we go. So let's set this material ID to 2, so that when we turn on quad scatter again, we get the checkered effect. And it seems that we've installed on a couple, so let's select ID in this. Alright, seems like we have a problem here, so okay, set ID for 2, and then let's have a look again. So some of This should be tree. So is this. So cool. So we've just finished modeling this then. So we have a tower now with the silos, and we can then delete its original faces. Oh, no. Let's just hide this for now. Hide selection, and then we can easily get this tower. And finally, we're down to modeling just the living quarters, I assume. And what we'll do is we'll just start with a cube. So from a hydra to a cylinder, this time we're going to start with a box, just a tall box. And then we're going to divide it according to levels, a couple of segments, a couple of heights. I assume it's not too dense, and therefore it's probably longer on the width, longer on the length, fewer. Now we can also start to model, as we mentioned before, we want to start, because this is similar and identical, we can use the instance, sorry, the reference tool. And so starting with a base model, we can create two similar but dissimilar, two linked objects as we design it. Now we're gonna use, in order to create the random extrusions, as we can see here, what we'll do is we'll just use apply and edit poly and selecting all the surfaces, and we're gonna do a Griebel. Notice how both of it's having Griebel, and we want it like that. So just turn on the widget, just turn off the widgets, and now we're seeing the extrusions. So the extrusions seem to be a little bit more random, and we just want it on the side, so not on the top. So we're just going to go back to edit poly, and just looking from the top, we're going to unselect this part, and we're just going to make sure that it's only on this part, not on here either. Just along the sides. So let's try that again. I'm just going to unselect this. Cool. So, and then that's the only part that's going to be Griebel, as you can see here. So we've got that, and some of it extruding at different lengths and variations. So whoops, I think we just unselected some of it, so let's do that again. Unselect this, and there we have it. So just to make it a little bit more looking through this hyper-apocalyptic urban form, And also it comes with a lattice structure, so we're going to start designing the lattice structure along with it. So what we'll do is we'll create an exact replicate of it now and just clone it, just a copy, and we'll take away Griebel. So let's hide previous two boxes. And we're going to select all of the faces, actually all of this. Then we're going to use a lattice function. And this time we're going to express the struts a little bit more. So joints, we're going to make the joints a little bit more expressive. So they're going to be much bigger, probably going to be 5 meters in length. They might have some function to it, but once we put it together, you see that it's holding it up quite nicely. Perhaps we would even want to have it on the Griebel as well, so we can create a clone. This time we're going to create a reference for it. So the fourth box, we can create a Griebel. Just edit poly so that we can select all of its lines, and we're going to lattice it. Right, just make sure you don't so make sure that's above, and then now you can see these things that are holding up this part as well. And we're just going to do the same for this part too. So we need to clone it, make it a reference, and then select the reference, and we're going to do the lattice, same thing. We get a lattice structure that holds it up, and there we go. We have two. Really quickly, we just made 2 blocks of living quarters with a silo and spacecraft behind it. Now we're just going to move it to place. Align it on the ground. Cool. So we have aligned it along the ground with it. And let's scale it up a little bigger, much bigger. And then just move it into place. And there we have it. So the last part where I want to model is just this connections in between the living quarters that you can see here. So what we'll do is we'll create a final copy of the boxes. Alright, let's let's choose this and hide and select it. Alright, make sure you pick the right one. And then again, we're gonna clone this and use this as a reference. So if any changes were made to the previous one, this would change as well, but what we're really interested in is what's happening above here. So I'm going to use another edit poly, and we're going to select a few things, a few bridges to connect both of it, and then we're just going to pull it out. And we're going to show this one. Select that, just selecting those faces, we're going to join it, puncture it in. So in order to create this, what we'll have to do now is again selecting this, selecting all this, and then we're just going to use connect. And really simply we are creating like subdivisions here. See that? So what we'll do next is we're going to then make a lattice structure out of this. There we go. So we have sky bridges that connect between these elements. Let's switch back to perspective and unhide all of it. And to get that really nice perspective views, we're gonna then set up a camera. So from here, just set up a target camera. So so just somewhere here, looking towards this, and then we can manipulate where it's here. So just restore the viewport, and we're gonna select camera 1. We're not getting quite right an angle that we saw before, so let's just unclick snap, and then we're going to grab here. Maybe the target is wrong as well, so we can change the target. A little bit further. Lower. And there we have it. So we just made a utopian city really simple, really quickly through 3ds Max. Thanks for watching, guys.